It's Scale School time. We're late. It's a detention for Mr. Erik Reppel. You know, it doesn't matter what you've done in the industry. If you're late to school, you get a detention. But let's kick things off.
I hope the teacher would know how to pronounce my last name. It's like, that's the...
Good thing is... I'm not the teacher, actually. I'm the teacher assistant. Sawyer's the teacher. Well, why don't you correct me? I apologize for that. Ow. Why don't you correct me and give us a little intro about yourself for the people that don't know you?
No, it's everyone gets it wrong. It's actually pronounced Reppel, like REPL, like the thing you interact with in a terminal. But everyone pronounces it wrong. So I'm very used to it. But I'm Eric. I'm the head of engineering for Coinbase Developer Platform, also the author of x402.
Yeah, it's honestly pleasure and honored to have you on. x402 has been top of mind for us here at Scale for so long. I remember. I think I was the one that gave x402 to you, Sawyer. No, but it was a long time ago. I have a screenshot of number of from Twitter Radar, number of people talking about x402, and it was like 1,000 tweets a day there. And we actually had a meeting with our CEO, and I said, "Hey, this is where it is now. Trust me. What's going to happen in a couple of months?" And boom, banged up. You did it was an incredible kind of innovation that we're still kind of scratching the surface with. And today, we're going to be jumping into obviously the creation of x402 and where it's going to go. So yeah, hello. Longest time you've not actually spoken.
Should I stay silent then?
No. You may talk.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? I'm good today. I actually just got off I think calling it the sister protocol might be fair at this point. Just got off a really good call with a bunch of the folks over working on the ERC 8004 Agent Zero SDK, where a bunch of those agents have been picking up x402 as their primary form of getting paid and making payments. So yeah, super good morning on my side, because I basically got to spend the morning talking with really smart people who are building really cool stuff. So
yeah.
Marco's
sorry.
I like Marco a lot.
Very good guy.
I played a very small part in getting EIP 8004 out the door, but David and Marco really did the bulk of the work.
Props to all you guys. It is one of those things where, and I mean, we see this with x402 as well. Writing software versus kind of coming up with an idea and putting a spec together is two very, very different things. And I think, you've shown yourself to be quite good at obviously both, being the head of engineering and now the creator of one and supporting with the other. I think what both of them kind of have brought right to the industry, which is really interesting, is for the first time I feel like a long time, we have something that is not crypto first, that has been an EIP or been a protocol that has gotten pretty big adoption. I feel like most of the larger adopted EIPs and kind of protocols were primarily things like account abstraction and whatnot, which were really just very heavy crypto. But yeah, curious on your thoughts there.
I think that it's a good question. I think that there's a need now to bridge the gap between crypto and the regular internet. And I think that crypto people think about EIPs as very much there's code involved. Most EIPs, code is changed, or there's a new function that's introduced, or there's a new okay, then you always have these 3 lines of code, and then this is how you include the struct, and then this is how you hash it, and then someone also write code that does something on the other side that knows how to recover that hash. And it's very code forward, whereas web standards are actually more convention forward, in that the way that Safari renders an image is, likely entirely different than how Chrome renders an image, but they both agree, like, when there's an image tag, then you see src equals, and then you see like a URL, or like, this is how it should behave. And that's just pure convention. Like, the output is now you can write code that follows that convention that then excuse me, that then is like understood everywhere. But it's not about the like code that renders the JPEG. It's about the agreement on markup of how the JPEG should be rendered, and that allows other people to then go write things that, insert an image tag. And so that really is what x402 is for payments, right? Is it's not, there's no code. X402 has a reference SDK, but there's like at least 6 x402 SDKs that I'm aware of at this point. Really, the value prop of x402 is that it's a convention on how to express payments and then how to complete payments. And that's, I think, critical for a number of reasons, one of which is that if you want these things to be ubiquitous, you can't centralize the implementations entirely. And then 2, like a question I got in the early days of x402 a lot was like, why is this not an EIP? I was like, well, because it needs to be every chain, and EIPs are an Ethereum thing. And L2s have kind of started to use EIPs as like an informal like self-governance thing as well. We're starting to see teams diverge from that, with Tempo and others like kind of having their own proposals and like not just implementing every EIP. But the Solana doesn't run on EIPs, Sui doesn't run on EIPs, Aptos doesn't run on EIPs. All these chains like have their own conventions, and so you need something that's not tied to a particular ecosystem if you want to fulfill the goal of like all of crypto moving in a singular direction.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I do feel like we're starting to see more and more of that, which is exciting. I'm curious if at some point we'll wind up with some form of aggregated standard, right? That is more just blockchain. Since we are starting to see, I think we're seeing a lot of things start in the Ethereum ecosystem, and everyone's immediately kind of like, hey, I want it on Solana, or vice versa. So yeah, maybe that is just a web standard.
I think that that's definitely true, and like maybe it is a web standard eventually. But I think you're maybe right in that there's like some blockchain standards governing body, because if you look at it, 8004 really followed x402's path on like getting to multi-chain, and now you see 8004 getting deployed on chains that aren't even just EVM. And that was actually I would say that was probably my biggest contribution to 8004, is pushing David and Marco to drop the EIP and just make it 8004 and like get it on as many blockchains as possible. Because if we're going to make this bridge from crypto being kind of its own world to being broadly useful, there can't be like 18 different ways to do it. Crypto is so small compared to the internet as a whole that it just like isn't going to happen unless there's like common ways. And the analogy I make a lot is like, you don't need to download a web browser per website. You don't need to download a Google web browser just to use Google. Google works on Safari. And that's kind of the moment that we're in, I think, and that we just need to have common standards, and like how you render the JPEG is kind of an implementation detail versus relative to the other things that are going on.
It's an interesting point, because I feel like it almost encapsulates crypto as an industry, right? Like, yes, UX and that kind of user experience has gotten better over time. If we remember back into like 2015 Toast wallets and all of this stuff, and where we are now, it has gotten substantially better, right? But in the end, can you explain it to your drunk grandma? And that's kind of where we need to get at some point. I remember talking to Sawyer, a couple of months ago. I said, hey, I feel like at some point, we're just going to have email addresses. Your Google account already has an astronomical number of applications that are linked to it. You're just going to get a wallet that's like linked in with it as well, right? Create an email. You have a wallet that's also there, and you can utilize these types of platforms.
We first need to clarify one really important thing, that the grandmother does not have to be drunk to have software be acceptable. A sober grandmother is also a very acceptable test for if your crypto or blockchain related product is better than the average. Because I guarantee you, if your sober grandmother can do it, you're the top 1% of crypto products.
But drunk grandmother always makes the guest laugh. So I go for drunk grandma.
Let's take that one offline. More relevantly, right? And I'm very curious about this, and I don't know if you get this question a lot. If you do, I apologize. Maybe we just skip it. But something I've been thinking a lot more about recently is the shift away from decentralization. And I don't mean at a blockchain perspective, because I think honestly we kind of sailed on that a while ago, but actually from how we interact with the blockchain perspective. Go back, a few years, and it was very much so if you didn't have your own keys, you didn't have crypto, right? It was very much so like that was the type of industry we were in. Everyone was very much so leaning on that. Fast forward a few years, obviously CDP, you guys are one of the biggest creators of embedded and kind of abstracted wallets, right? To Mr. Falcor's point, let people log in with Google, let people on-ramp with Apple Pay, right? Kind of starting to really abstract this experience. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I actually think it's a great thing, right? Because again, it brings us back to this point of how do we get this stuff in the hands of real people, not just the small crypto bubble. Curious how you've seen CDP actually help drive the adoption of x402. Do you think without CDP, it would have been a lot harder? Are you seeing other people, competitors to CDP, also kind of helping push this forward?
It's a good question. No one's asked me it before. I think that if you look at how standards go out, you need big champions behind standards. And so I don't think it would have been possible to build x402 without the context of Coinbase and the environment and the weight that Coinbase brings to the market when you launch something. CDP, of course, does a bunch of stuff around x402, increasingly so. And I think when you're at a big company, it's like a battleship, right? It takes a while to like turn a corner, but it has like so much power and so much weight behind it. And I think you've seen kind of like the best of Coinbase in many ways, and how it's gotten its weight behind x402. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those things where like it would not be where it is today if not for Coinbase supporting it in the way that it has.
Love it. One of my favorite things that you guys did, which was highly controversial, but needed, was you added fees to your facilitator. This was something where I think for the first maybe 2.5 months, when I kind of brought x402 to the SKALE ecosystem and to the team, and I said, hey, like this is gonna go. We need to be involved in this. And the question I kept getting asked was, how do these people make money? And I kept saying, they're gonna charge people. And everyone was like, no, they're not gonna do that. Like they won't get used to it. And I was like, no, like they're gonna do it, because the facilitator is kind of like the Stripe, right? They're facilitating a payment. They're playing middleman here. And I love the fact that, you kind of say, oh, Coinbase is it's like a battleship. Maybe it moves a little bit slower, but there's a lot of power. I think that was really a bold move that most larger companies would probably not have taken first, just because in theory, it like that usage was happening on Base. You guys have that close, obviously Base is a Coinbase ecosystem project. And so in theory, you guys could have subsidized fees forever. And like you could have if you were able to work out the back end. But the fact that you did it set a standard where we're now seeing all the other facilitators come forward and say, okay, I can do this and it's not going to hurt my business because you guys set the standard. So curious kind of when you guys were going through that decision, what's the story behind why you guys chose to be the first mover?
Well, so there's a few parts to that. So CDP and Base are like completely different business units within Coinbase. And so we have different like budgets and P&Ls. And so we don't necessarily get we don't necessarily like it comes out of our budget if we're just giving away base gas for free. And so that's like, the inside, that's the insider track. But I think even beyond that, like, yeah, we could have afforded to subsidize for significantly longer than we did. But it's exactly to your point is I forever got the question of how is a facilitator sustainable? And I was like, my answer for forever, it was like one of the first questions I got was like, it's the market will figure it out. Like people will run facilitators. I suspect it's going to be somewhat like WordPress hosting, where like every domain provider offers WordPress hosting. Some of them are better, some of them are worse. There's like different reasons to use different ones, but ultimately it's like a feature that many people have, and then you compete on like what differentiated services do you provide alongside your WordPress hosting. And so I think facilitators are the same, where there's nothing a facilitator does that someone on their laptop could vibe code in a couple days, right?
Yeah.
It all becomes like, what are the other features that you have? What is your uptime? What is your performance? What is your scale? How are you kind of serving the people who are choosing to use your facilitator? And our facilitator, right? Like we have things like discovery, and we like make all of our Bazaar endpoints, no auth. You can just go scrape them, and that's like how x402 scan got started. Is just like scraping the x402, the CDP x402 Bazaar, and aggregating and presenting that data in a clean way. And so, one of the features we give is like if you use our facilitator, we give you distribution effectively. Like we put you in this like list that we publish of services that people can use. And I kept saying like, oh, the market will figure this out. And CDP, I felt like, should be the first entrant into the market of just setting a standard of like, hey, this is how we're choosing to monetize it. We are monetizing it. We're charging a flat fee. There's no percent, flat fee per transaction, and that's what we do. And I think critically the difference, why that works is because a facilitator isn't in flow of funds. Like a facilitator is in transaction flow, but a facilitator doesn't have the ability to alter where the transaction is going. Like you don't have to trust your facilitator, which is one of the critical design things I was optimizing for with x402 is trustlessness between the clients, the server, and the facilitator. And that the worst thing a facilitator can do to you is just not broadcast your transaction, but they can't change any of your money.
Definitely.
And so I think the right analogy for crypto people with facilitators is actually paymasters. Like facilitators are just narrowly scoped paymasters that work really well with EOAs, right? And but the service it's providing is just like helping you get on chain. You could do the same thing if you had a wallet, but on your back end. But people don't want to run wallets on their back end.
Right. That's funny enough. That's been my argument. I've been talking with a lot of the teams running facilitators, and a lot of the feedback I'm getting from people is like, oh yeah, we don't think we're going to have to run this long term. I was like, guys, I think your philosophy's backwards. I was like, people don't want to run anything. Look at like, people don't run their own databases. They don't run their own S3 buckets. They don't run their own servers generally, unless they're gigantic or they're building like hyper-focused compute. People don't run anything. There's I see it, I feel like every few months there's this really funny like meme tweet that pops up where it's like, Uber, Uber made their business renting cars that they didn't own. Airbnb made their business renting houses they didn't own, right? It's like kind of that trend. And I feel like the entire world of software is kind of built on that same philosophy. And so I think the fact that the facilitator is decoupled, the facilitator's trustless, and the fact that as long as the facilitator is kind of just doing some basics for you, like I think the fact that I think almost every facilitator now is doing the sanctions checks, which is amazing. Like if they're just doing some basics for you, it's worth paying that fee for probably 99.9% of businesses, because you just don't, it's one less thing you have to deal with, right? It's just like, get started, don't worry about it, just get moving.
I'll put it this way, during kind of the peak x402 like massive traffic spikes, like bots, like minting tons of tokens. Our facilitator was shoving like 500 transactions per block into base blocks, which is hard because you have to have really good nonce management and scale, and you have to be like very good at wallet ops to be able to sign and broadcast that many transactions per block. And that is hard engineering to do. It's not an easy problem to solve, and most companies probably don't want to spend the time it takes to do that. And there's economies of scale of like, we did that once and now we can offer that service to many, many people. Anyone can run a facilitator, but if you're running your own, there's no guarantee that your facilitator is going to be able to handle when you have like a massive influx of traffic when you go viral, right? And so
For sure.
it's like this, it's this trade, right? It's the VPC hosting is relatively commoditized at this point. You can spin up a VM, a Linux VM, for like $3 a month, and on like any number of providers. And so sorry, there's like a lot of background noise. Is that me or is that?
Is that me? Sorry.
That is you, so yeah.
I'm sure Sawyer can still hear me, but
Yeah.
like you can rent like a vanilla Linux virtual machine from anywhere, like Amazon, Google, Hertznerd, DigitalOcean, anywhere. It's like all the other stuff that they give you that makes it differentiated. It's like the scale, auto scaling, like how good's the portal, how good's the console. Like Vercel has made a business, right, on just providing amazing developer experience and like amazing tooling, and it all runs on AWS Lambdas.
Definitely.
And so, that's, I think, a facilitator story as well. It's like, you could do this yourself. You could rack your own servers. You could, get a base level virtual machine, or you can just pay someone to make it amazing for you and focus on, there's like this aphorism I like quite a lot, which is just focus on what makes your beer taste better. It's like, if you're a product company, are you going to worry about like, which gas the truck that like drives your like beers to the distribution center uses, or like what model that truck is? You don't care. Like, what you care about is like the quality of your hops, and like, is your process good, and like, do you have customers? And so like take the concerns that aren't actually making your product better out of your thought, and just focus on what's going to make your product as good as possible.
I think that's one of the interesting things as well, right? Like in traditional B2B businesses, that transport cost is already baked in, right? And I don't think until there is mass kind of acceptance of that idea, we're not going to see a huge number of institutional partners, from my point of view, enter into the space when you have such high kind of, to your point, you have a budget, right? You know what your budget is, and you can't have all of these individual little checks and balances that are trading all the time. It's a lot easier for you to just have a single fee that you're going to pay to that other business, right? And then, it's something that obviously is something that we're working on, right, Sawyer, with regards to the credit system and things like that. And it kind of goes back to that UX idea, right? And how, as an industry, we are consistently evolving and changing, but for some reason we're still kind of stuck on this transaction piece when it comes to gas fees.
I think so. I disagree slightly with you, actually. I think gas fees have mostly been solved at this point through one form of abstraction or another. I think the only time you really see gas fee related issues is when there's either a bloodbath in the market, like we saw the other day, and then all of a sudden, the stuff where, not throwing shade at anybody, but right, we got last week, we get the statement of, oh, L2s aren't really needed anymore. And then we see that, and Ethereum is all of a sudden crazy expensive again. And everyone's like, no, I want to use an L2. So, you kind of have this, I feel like you have a little bit of trade-off there, but generally when things are normal, I don't really see gas fees being an issue for most people. I think the usage of gas and the abstraction of it is where the value's been derived. And that's why we do have people, like CDP, that have smart accounts that abstract all that for you. And you've got 25 plus other companies, maybe 30 plus other companies in the space that do this really well. And they make it so you don't have to worry about it. I think the part that's actually really, really interesting that Erik said is the statement about Vercel. Because I agree. Vercel is crazy expensive for what you get in comparison to everything else, but it just is so easy. Like, they're my go-to now. I hated Next.js for years. Next.js is a black box, still is. I don't know half of what's happening there, but these days, when you're trying to build something quick, it's 0 to 1 faster, and it just kind of takes care of it. And I'm like, I'll worry about it later if it winds up, being an issue. And I think with not just x402, but I think with AI and crypto crossover, agents on chain, kind of all these broad buzzwords, I think there's a huge opportunity for multiple different teams to build net new things that don't exist yet, that are going to be the equivalent of like the Vercel. And I think the next one for me will probably be discovery. I don't think it's an issue yet because we don't have that many endpoints, but I think once we go and scale up 100x and you've got, 100,000 or 200,000 merchants, I think we're going to see the current bazaar structure break, and you're going to need to see people doing all sorts of different search types. And that's just going to be something that people turn around and say, well, we need something better. It's not that the core design of it is broken. It's just that we don't yet have the scale required to need something more. So as it grows, I think we'll start to see those bespoke services pop up. And I think those, in my eyes, could very much so be from the facilitator companies as they look to expand and grow.
I think we're in the age of mass simplicity. In that, why do you use Vercel? It's because it's super easy. They make it super easy. And I think especially as people start vibe coding more and more, it's like, I know from my personal usage, like I write 10x the amount of AI generated code than I did 6 months ago. And that 6 months ago, I was still tab completing everything in Cursor. And now it's, when I write code, it's usually push Claude code until it stops giving me good output or gets stuck, and then just go fix things myself. And so if that's the case, like, do you care if it's Next.js or Vite or like what how your config initialization works? No, you just want it to work. And so it forces like a move to simplicity. And I think that's like the story for gas. And like, I think honestly, that's the story for a lot of crypto payments, in that the industry as a whole cares about all these details, like the crypto industry does. But that's like maybe 5 million, 10 million developers, depending on the day. I think that, and there's like 8 billion humans, all of whom are going to probably end up using AI. I think the thing they care about is like, can their AI pay for stuff? What can their AI do for them? There are way more people who care about what can their AI do for them than they do about the like particulars of how a transaction is settled on chain, or like what chain it is, or like, did I pay gas? Did someone else pay gas? It's like, I want to buy I want to generate an image. I want to buy a t-shirt. I want to book a vacation. Like, these are the things people care about versus the like, what chain a thing settled on or what mechanism it used. These are all like technical implementation details we as engineers need to care about and think through robustly to make sure that the products that we build are good. Because I don't think AI is yet at the point where it can design these things at 100% success rate. But normies don't care. Normies don't care. Normies want the simple thing. Engineers want the complicated thing.
I agree. And so I actually have a question for you. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, which is someone in crypto maybe shouldn't say this publicly, but I'll say it because I'm a contrarian by nature and I'm okay with that. I don't think the whole world is going to ultimately be crypto payments. I think there will always be other forms of payment. I think people in crypto want to believe otherwise, and that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But traditional finance has gotten so much faster. Crypto has actually pushed TradFi to get faster and open up more opportunities for people to access financial services. extended hours for trading, things like that. Same day settlement, it's blah, 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 right? All that good stuff. And so there's a really controversial component, I think was controversial, to the X402 V2 spec, which was the addition of the ability to do non-crypto payments, right? You could do an ACH payment, you could do a credit card payment via X402. And I remember sitting on one of the community calls, and I want to say there was at least 1 or 2 questions where people basically said, like, why? Like, why is this beneficial to me? I work in crypto. Like, why do I want this? Why do I need this? And long story short, that led to a series of questions from other people basically saying, how does this impact blockchain? And so my question for you is, when you started designing the V2 spec and you started thinking about that, where did that come in priority-wise? Was that something you were like, we need this for adoption, or I just think it's going to be relevant in the future, let's plan for it now? And B, what is the actual impact on blockchain? As in, if someone makes a credit card payment via X402 and we actually figure out how that's going to work, does it touch a blockchain? Is there an on-chain settlement? Is there a proof? Or does this all then happen off-chain and the facilitator is just basically playing middleman?
It's a great question. So I started thinking about adding fiat to X402 when I was designing V1 of X402. Like, the intention all along has been to create a singular standard for payments on the internet, regardless of underlying network. And so crypto just happens to be the best payment network, in my opinion. It's the most open. It's the only one that I can actually just go write a standard for payments on without having to like go talk to a bunch of BD people at payments companies. And so I think that this is a place where payments have improved, but I think they are not as good as crypto payments in many regards, in terms, and specifically around small payments, and specifically around like sub-dollar payments. And that, you can't really put a credit card charge for like 10 cents and for it to be economically viable as a business, because you're paying 30 cents in fees plus 3%. And I think that there's like an entire category of transactions that aren't represented on the internet right now because you can't do microtransactions, and you also can't do low friction transactions. And that unless your credit card is on file, it's always more than one button press to pay for something. And so, like, where are the 25 cents news articles you can read? They haven't existed because of the dynamics of payments on the internet. And so my perspective is, like, I think that modern blockchains are genuinely better for moving money for a number of reasons than pretty much every payment rail that exists as of right now. And so my prompt to the people in crypto is, like, compete on the technological merits. Just make the best product. Like, if there's true advantages, you'll get adoption.
Let me ask you a question, right? So it's funny because when X402 started to hit my feed, a couple of days later, I went to a carnival, right? It was a fair. And every single sign said, no card transactions under £5, right? Because obviously it's just, you get killed on the transaction fees, right? Do you think we could see a world in which we would have, like machine payment, and by machine, I actually mean like handheld machine payments for small businesses and things like that carnival, using X402?
Yeah, 100%. Like, this is the one part of X402 that I didn't fully anticipate. And we kind of added it in partway through V1 and then more formalized it in V2. But it's transport agnostic X402, in that the payment instructions for an X402 transaction, in theory, can be transmitted in any way. In fact, I had a friend who was like, "Oh, I have a buddy who works at some chip company that does like parking in parkades. You should talk to them about using X402 over NFC so your car can like auto pay when it drives into a parkade." And it's like, actually, yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't deliver X402 payment instructions over NFC by a car automatically when it drives through a payment gate. right? Like there's no reason why you couldn't just like stick a QR code on like a billboard periodically, and then your car like has a little camera on it that reads the like QR code and then gets the X402 instructions and then makes the payment. Like you can do anything, right? As long as you all agree on how the information is represented and how the information is transmitted, there's no limit to like how you can do these those kinds of payments. And so the short answer is yes. And to your point on minimum £5 transactions, I don't think people realize like how much regular businesses get killed by credit card fees. Like if you're a restaurant, most restaurants operate at like 10 to 15% margin. And if they're now losing 3% of that to card processing fees, that's like 30% of their revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, so this such a good conversation. This is a really interesting one, and I've got a number of people who have asked me this, and my response, which I think is how you're going to respond. I think I've been answering this correctly, but you'll confirm or deny for me. The question is, do we always need X402? And my answer has always been, if you explicitly know who they are and you can trust the fact that you're going to get the service and you know exactly how to send them and you guys like have already agreed, sure, you could pay them like with a direct ERC20 transfer. However, the world tends to work in a way where on the day-to-day, when you go out and you swipe your credit card, you go to all these places and you pay in cash, you pay via ACH or whatever it may be, you're paying all these different merchants and you actually don't know any of the information behind the scenes. And so you need this standard to actually help you figure out, how am I going to pay them? What's their information, the agreement, et cetera, et cetera. And so my answer has been X402 tends to make sense for most facilitated payments because it helps with that. It helps with the structure of what do you want and how am I actually going to do it? Because in most cases, we don't actually know that information and we have to ask either way. Agree, disagree?
I mean, my hope is X402 kind of fades into the background and that X402 becomes like HTTP of money, and that HTTP is ubiquitous, but no one ever like debates it. You just use HTTP. I think that you can do a send like relatively easily, but when's the last time that you did a send to a crypto address that didn't have ENS set up from a mobile wallet? So I did this the other day, and the issue is that like even within crypto, sends are not standardized. Like, how do you get the address is like a non-trivial question. In that, like, I had a wallet. Literally, this happened to me last night. I was running a wallet for a product we're releasing this week, little teaser, and it like shows a QR code to receive payment to. And so I opened up my Rainbow wallet, and then I like scanned. I was like, oh, Rainbow doesn't support QR code scanning to get an 0x address. You have to like ENS or type in or paste in the 0x hash. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go use TBA. And then at that, like, I had to like switch ways I was gonna move money because it's not ubiquitous on how to like show QR code. Not every wallet does it. I know of at least 3 different ways of representing an address in a QR code for a wallet to like even do that same like receive transaction or even just get the wallet address, because there's no like ubiquitous standard.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my prompt, is that if you're sending someone money, like if I'm just like at a bar and I'm like, Sawyer buys me a beer and I pay him back, like, yeah, I can just send it to Sawyer's like name in my contact book or contact in my wallet. But if I'm at a restaurant and I want a receipt, like most times payment X402 also solves the like, how do you get info back? Right. And that the restaurant hands you a receipt. Like, do you want that receipt? How is it? You can now like, if you had X402 payments in a mobile app, like super easy, like show the QR code, it goes to a URL, your wallet opens the URL, it pays, it sends back to you the receipt, right? If you're just doing a send, like, guess we're back to paper. Like, how do we do the receipt part? And I think that's like the difference in between payments and sends of money. Is that if you're paying for something, typically you're getting something back, whether it's a receipt or a service or something else, confirmation code, whatever. If you're just sending money to your family or to like your friend, then you don't need that last part. But
Right.
I think these things are like, I think these are the advantages because it closes the loop. And because like there aren't actually that many standards that do a good job of conveying how to perform payment as it is.
Fair enough. That makes a lot of sense. I fully agree with you in regards to the winning standard is kind of hidden, right? So, right, if you're an engineer and you build a REST API, you know all too well, or maybe you don't, I don't know. I know most of the primary HTTP status codes off the top of my head. I know what they are. I know what errors they return. I know the basics, right? I know, there's one that says I'm a teacup, and I still have not figured out why. But
for the memes, it's purely for the memes.
Someone had a good joke many years ago. They were just passing it down, passing it forward.
Wait.
But what
I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to give you
Please.
my best. A thing people ask me all the time is, when am I going to build X403? And my mandated response is that it's forbidden.
Oh man!
Well done.
That's a joke
I like that a lot.
Do you know why, Falcor?
Yes, I know.
Why?
403, because 403 is the internet code for forbidden. 404 is not found.
Nice. All right. I'm proud of
But
you.
I've had people genuinely ask me that, like, probably 20 times, and then half of them get it and half of them don't get it.
It's
I kind of want to hit you. Like, no, not you, Eric. Sawyer. Like, do you think I'm a moron?
No, I think the average human being actually rarely sees a 403 status code, because 9 out of 10 times a business will choose 401 unauthorized over 403 forbidden, even if 403 forbidden is correct. Yes. Don't ask me why. It's just, that's what I've seen. People very rarely use 403 forbidden. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, so you guys can break the news. We're not doing X403.
You had it here first.
Can we do a press release on this? That'd be so funny.
That would be bloody hilarious.
No. The whole joke is that just X403 is forbidden. They won't let us do it. They won't let us do it.
I'll see what I can get across. But I actually remember the first time I saw that. I think it was in the Telegram, not the Telegram channel. That was also in the community call. I was in the community call, and someone, I think, sent that in the chat where they raised their hand and asked it. And I believe that I turned my camera off because I was trying not to laugh. I couldn't help myself because I felt both bad, but I was also like, this is it's a valid question if you don't know what 402 is yet. So, education is key. But I really like this. I really like the idea that it kind of fades in the background, right? Again, kind of going back to, as an engineer, you've got all these kind of, frameworks and SDKs that make it really easy to build APIs. And they just abstract most of that from you, right? You need to know the basics on how to return a response, but you don't need to know the internals of, here's how to actually do a TLS handshake between ABC before you actually are able to send the request. Like, most people don't know what that is. I didn't do so well in that class in college. That's okay. And I like where you're going with that a lot.
One of the things that I find most interesting as an engineer is what I call light switch technologies. In that, if you enter a room, you expect there to be a light switch. But that is like a technological marvel that did not exist like 100 years ago, maybe like 140 years ago now. In that 140 years ago, you entered every room you entered did not have a light switch. And now every room you enter has a light switch. And people completely take for granted that there's going to be a little button on the wall that makes light in the room. And that is like what TLS is. That's what HTTP is. It's like things that are ubiquitous, but kind of technological marvels. And I think as engineers, like it's some of the most interesting things to be working on, that things that have the potential to become ubiquitous things that people use every day and create huge amounts of value, but are going to completely fade into the background.
So that being said, what comes next, right? We've got V2. We've got a couple of new extensions. I believe sign in with X was just dropped. I want to say last week, Monday or Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. We've seen we saw the Python SDK, the official one from Coinbase, just got a revamp to V2, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Idempotency keys just got released, or an extension for idempotency keys just got released.
Okay, I like it. The up to scheme.
Up to scheme proposals up. Leave your comments for EVM. Would love for other chains to put their proposals for how to do up to on their chains as well. Foundation is imminent. More details on that to come. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up, some of which I can't talk about yet, but we will.
Okay.
No,
we'll
you can. How about this? We'll set up some x402 payments. Each, broken NDA/leak, we will send you 1 cent.
I think I get paid a little more than 1 cent per feature at Coinbase. So, yeah.
Damn. Okay.
So if we can't talk about some of the stuff that isn't ready to be shared yet, let's talk about what you want to see. Perspective-wise, everyone has their opinions. Just, the crossover between crypto and AI, the crossover between AI and x402. What do you feel like we're not seeing yet? Like what we're seeing, I'm going to provide context to the people listening at home really quick. Facilitators, we've got a lot of them now, and it's good. We wanted a lot of them. We're starting to see what I call x402 proxies. I don't know if there's an official name for this. I call an x402 proxy someone that essentially is a middleman for someone who doesn't want to implement x402 directly as a merchant. So basically, I have an API. I want to accept x402 payments, and instead of adding x402 to my API, I add a header that's a secret, and the proxy is allowed to call it, and they basically handle payments and collection of assets for me. I call it a proxy because it's a middleman. We're starting to see, I've seen a bunch of those. Agentic wallets have become big. We haven't really seen them be x402 native yet. They're primarily just sending. We're seeing merchants. We're seeing ERC 8004 agents come to life now. That's on mainnet. Just went live on Base, I think yesterday or today. And we're slowly seeing real adoption. We went through like a meme coin bubble where, yeah, sure, there was a lot of spam and stuff happening and everyone got excited. The numbers have come down. I think that's fine. We're seeing real usage for resources. What's next? What should people be building?
I'm going to pull up a Twitter meme. Give me 2 seconds.
Do it. This would be a perfect time, Mr. Falcor, if we had some, like, what's the show? Jeopardy? We had some little, we need like some elevator music. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Let's get these second. I like it. Well, while we're waiting for Eric to find it, one thing
it's too deep in my likes. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Hopefully dramatic. I think there are a lot of people selling picks and shovels, and I think there are more people who need to be panning for gold. And so concretely, I think that people should be building more on the demand side. In that, there's build cool interfaces, build build integrations into like the major LLM providers. Here's the thing that I think you totally could do. is just like build a production grade N8N that just lets you call x402 tools and like make that a real
one shot. Have you seen One Shot?
I have, yeah. But like One Shot's great. That's like a great example of like the kind of thing that you can do. Where the last part I was going to add is like, and then make opinionated workflows, and then even monetize those opinionated workflows, where it's like N8N, and then you take like a particularly useful N8N flow that you know works, and then stick that behind an API, and then charge like a premium on top of the amounts that you're paying out. So if it costs 7 cents to do all the like actions in it, charge 10 cents, and then create more like end-to-end solutions that are like a stack of x402 actions together that you're basically charging a premium for like having curated and making it super easy to invoke in line, right? Start building more things that are like, oh, I am like a person who wants to do a thing, and like this would be annoying, or I'd have to set up 3 accounts or like vibe code a custom tool. But now this like solves the problem for me.
Definitely. And I think, you know, we on the Scale side, we've been having a lot of discussions about this, because there's a very large question right now, which has a very straightforward answer right now, which is who's going to use this stuff? And the answer is always going to be humans and agents. You're not just going to see one or the other. And I said this a few months ago, and I said, hey, everyone's really excited about the future of autonomous agents, but they're not really that here today. OpenClaw is really cool, but OpenClaw is a really good way to lose all your money or your bank account or whatever, because it's complicated. And even if you run it in production, it doesn't mean that every agent right now is going to go figure out how to make money. That's a very complex thing to figure out how to create a semi-sentient agent that could do that. And so I equate what you just said to humans are here today. Humans need things. Humans love to spend money. We have an addiction to it. And when you're building things, build better experiences for humans. And arguably the simplest way today is turn something that really, really sucks to do and just make it, just talk to it. And then, right, like that's kind of, for me, one of the easiest things. There's so many things still that I have to click buttons for that I don't like clicking buttons for. If someone figures out how to do government forms via chat prompt, I will gladly pay via x402 for that. Clicking boxes is not fun, but
yeah, 100%. Like build real products that people can use, and like there's actually a ton of stuff in the x402 ecosystem on the supply side now. Like
yes,
there's so many things on supply side, and like so go build things that use those things. Build consumer applications.
It's a little bit of a flywheel, right? If you do it the right way, you can accept x402 payments, or you don't have to, but then you in turn can use the x402 endpoints to find the best thing, right? If you're building a consumer application that finds the best coffee shop near you, because I don't know about you, but there's been like 8 new coffee shops stand up near me in the last, 6 months. Everyone wants coffee shop these days. Build an app, find the best coffee shop. That in the background may use some form of search, inference, maps, etc. Maybe someone's got a flash sale on compute and you realize, hey, I can dynamically select the cheapest provider and my margin just got bigger and I make more money, right? These are the capabilities of x402. That was a terrible example, but you get the gist.
No, you're totally right. Like there are so many things to build on the, like, you now have like a canvas of tools that you can just use or have an agent use without needing to like go sign up for API keys and stuff. Just go build stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Here, do you have a hard stop?
I have a fairly hard stop. If you have like one more question, take it. I have one last thing.
Go fast.
Okay. I just want a yes or no. That's all. I don't need anything crazy. One of my new hypotheses, whatever you want to call it, is x402 changes the ability to create, I call it the middle class of SaaS or software. Historically, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to be $1 trillion company or you're going to be a little homegrown business. And it's hard to be in between. X402 really reduces the costs that a merchant has to take on to run, and it opens you up to a world of things that you don't necessarily have to pay enterprise subscriptions for anymore. I believe this unlocks the middle class of software development that hasn't really existed. Just curious. Kind of agree, don't agree, heavily disagree, like it, needs more thought.
No, totally agree. I think that what X402 does is enables services to function without free tiers, or to drastically reshape free tiers. In that, like, there is like why does all SaaS go after enterprise? It's because they're the only ones who like are actually going to spend $20 a month and get $20 a month of value out of a thing that you may want to use like once every 2 months. And so if it's free or $10 a month, like you just lose everybody who's not an enterprise out of that conversion. And so I think it creates like a new swim lane, which is just pay as you go, and you just make money as people use your service.
Love it.
Love it. Erik, absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for joining us. And, it's been incredible learning more. And, we're really excited for the future of X402. And, we're going to keep on keeping on.
Love it. Thanks guys.
Right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Come on.
Bye, everyone.